I've had this location on my bucket list for a very long time, but I finally made it happen. You're gonna have to excuse my crazy hair, but I've been living in my car for 3 days already. It took me a while to get here. I'm very excited about being back on the road. I get to visit places like this one. I'm going to show you how I live on the road, why I do it, and why it's been so good for my photography. But first things first, because the sun is about to set, and that is gonna be my chance to make the one photograph I had in mind for this place. Well, this is what we got here tonight. A full moon, beautiful location. What else could we ask for, right? So, of course, you know the drill. What I'm gonna try to do tonight is a full moon, a long exposure of the full moon, hopefully going above the tower. I just need to wait a little bit longer, probably another half an hour until it gets dark and I can start getting those exposures that I need. So the battery is fully charged, but just in case I brought a power bank, so I'm gonna plug it into the camera. That way I make sure that it's not going to die. Let's wait a couple hours. It was a cold night, so I left the camera running while I waited in the car. An hour and a half later, I went back to check, and to my surprise, even though the camera was still on, it had stopped shooting. I had no idea why. I restarted it and stayed nearby to make sure it didn't happen again. It wasn't until the next day, while looking through the 700 exposures I made that night, that I realized the camera had stopped twice for 18 minutes each time. I don't know how that happened, but it left a couple of big gaps in the final image. But honestly, I kind of like it. This is my home on wheels. When I'm on the road, the car becomes my bedroom, my kitchen, and even my office. I know it's not for everyone, but it works for me. It's a simple setup, one I've been using for a while, with the exception of one very noticeable addition I made recently. It is so cold. I got a roof box for this trip because it's gonna be a long time on the road and I don't have the space in the car for everything I need for a several month trip. But other than that, it's a very simple setup and it's stayed pretty consistent over the years, very similar to the one I showed you a year ago, and it's very similar to the one I have in Spain as well in my other car. But basically it covers all the needs that I have. I have a bed in here, I have food, I have water, and most importantly, almost, I have power. See, the battery of my camera just died as I was talking about this big battery. That's why I need this to charge all my cameras, devices. I have my computer to work on the photos and videos on the road. So there you go. And that's it. As you can see, it doesn't have to be complicated. This setup covers all of my needs. Let me tell you a little bit about Devil's Tower, a location I've wanted to photograph for a long time. This column of volcanic rock rises over 850 feet above the surrounding plains, seemingly out of nowhere. It's not hard to see why it was, and still is, a sacred place for native tribes, or why it became the first national monument in the country more than 100 years ago. The conditions were not ideal for the kind of photography I do though, but still, I tried my best to capture the place in black and white. One thing I did not expect was to find a whole community of prairie dogs at the base of the tower. They were almost as entertaining as the tower itself, and I spent quite a bit of time filming and photographing them. They are incredibly cute creatures, and I'm glad these ones are thriving here, even if their natural habitat is a fraction of what it was just a couple of 100 years ago.
This video is brought to you by my Patreons. Their support makes this journey of mine possible, and I'm so grateful for it. If you like to support me and my work, consider joining our Patreon community as well. Find the link in the description. Alright, back to the video.
I am at the spot I was at last night. I thought it would be a nice setting to have breakfast, but there are quite a few bees around here, so I don't know if it's a good idea to prepare breakfast. Again, I try to keep it as simple as possible. I don't live on the road full time. This is something I do a few months a year. If I were to, spend most of my time on the road, living in the car, things would be different, but because I don't have fancy equipment for cooking. I don't have fancy equipment like cool chairs or tables. I just have the very basics that keep me, alive and well. I have very simple foods on the road. For breakfast, I usually have oatmeal with some fruit and some spices like cinnamon, cocoa powder, flax seeds, and then I add some fruit like bananas or blueberries when I can. I heat up some water for the oatmeal, and then for coffee using the battery as well, which is very, very nice to have, especially on cold mornings like this one. Breakfast is ready, but there's a hawk, I think, on top of that tree. I'm gonna try to get a shot. Well, that's too bad. I was trying to position myself on the other side so I could get the tower in the background, but it didn't work. Well, sadly, breakfast is gonna have to happen inside the car because the bees are going a little bit too crazy with all the smells, and I can only imagine it'll get worse once I cut these bananas. But hey, the view is pretty nice.
This road trip didn't start at Devil's Tower, but much farther east. My first stop was the southern shores of Lake Michigan, a place I visit often, but one I can never skip if I'm driving through. I only had a couple of hours, but still managed to make a few images there. After hundreds of miles of straight, endless highways across the Great Plains, my next stop was the Badlands in South Dakota. I hadn't been there in over 7 years. I made a few photographs during the very short time I was there, but it doesn't really count, so I'll have to go back. What a place. And finally, Devil's Tower, a spot I had wanted to photograph for a long time but never had the chance before. I had a great time there, but the conditions weren't quite what I was hoping for.
I was hoping for some nice cloudy, moody conditions today. That's what the forecast had for this location, but it's not happening, as you can see. So I think I'm gonna change my plans and leave early. This is one of the key advantages of living in the car, and why it works so well for my photography is the flexibility and the versatility that it gives me, because I can just, get in the car and go.
And off I went, though I only made it a couple of miles before Devil's Tower claimed my attention for one last time. Back on the road again, ahead of me hundreds of miles of open, vast territory before my next destination. But out here, miles are almost meaningless. The land just keeps stretching out, the highways seem endless, and most of the time it's just you and the road. This emptiness can feel a bit lonely, but there's something very peaceful about it. I just realized I haven't told you what the rough plan is, but basically I'm gonna be on the road for the next few months until mid-November, Thanksgiving, more or less. I might go back home earlier if I get tired of it, or I might stay a little bit longer if it's amazing. I'll play it by ear as usual, but there's not a whole lot of planning. All I know is that I'm gonna be out west. That being said, I do have one fixed date. I have to be in San Francisco in 3 days because I have a doctor's appointment. It's a long story, but I have to be there in 3 days. So that's why I'm gonna be mostly flying through Wyoming, Utah, Nevada, because I need to be in California in 3 days.
This is where the landscape starts to change, where east and west meet. The first hills appear and then the first mountains. It's still mostly open and empty space unless you run into this.
Well, this has been my view for the last 10 minutes. We haven't moved in that time. The traffic is all backed up. There was a helicopter passing by too. I know what happened, but I'm guessing a bad crash or something. In any case, it's not great. I'm not in a huge rush, but my idea was to make it to the Salt Flats just outside of Salt Lake City. But I am more than 5 hours away. It's kind of late already, and this is not helping. So we'll see if I can make it there today. If not, I'll have to crash somewhere else out on the highway. If not right here, we'll see what happens, because again, no one is moving.
Okay, we moved a little bit. It's hard to tell what's going on because we are in between huge trucks. There are huge trucks everywhere, so I might as well.
Finally freed, I drove through some isolated storms. The rain cleared just in time for a beautiful sunset, and then a big moon appeared in the sky. It had been a long day on the road, and I was ready for some well-deserved rest in the back of my car.
Yesterday was a very, very long day, but you know, it had to be done at some point, and I'm glad I pushed it a little bit to be here for sunrise, because this place is... I have no words, I guess. We have an almost full moon there, the mountains, the salt flats, the sun rising. There are some clouds, so we'll see if we get a lot of sunlight. It is absolutely perfect, other than the highway noise, of course, because the highway is right here. But other than that, incredible, incredible place.
As beautiful as this place already is, it can get even better under the right conditions. Years ago, I was lucky enough to see the salt flats flooded after heavy rains, and it was incredible.
I know that sleeping in a rest area doesn't sound like a very glamorous thing to do, or even a good idea, but I find it to be pretty decent, especially when it's a rest area like this one. This is beautiful, and you have access to the landscape you want to photograph right away. And because you are living in your car, you already have everything there with you. Have your food, have all your camera gear. There is no loading and unloading bags and backpacks from the car to the hotel room or the Airbnb or whatever. And they are safe for the most part. I've slept many times at rest areas and nothing has ever happened, but it is true that I try to stay in rest areas that are kind of far away from big cities because I don't want people just driving around to check things out. This one is pretty far. It's an hour and a half from Salt Lake City. There's a small town there, Wendover, but you know, people are not gonna be driving here just to check out who is sleeping there and whatnot. Sun is out and the landscape is changing, has already changed quite dramatically. Well, it wasn't the most beautiful sunrise ever, but I am so thankful that I get to experience moments like this. This place again is absolutely beautiful. It's like out of this world. I have another very long day on the road today, so I better get going. But first, I'm gonna make some coffee. Everything is better after some coffee.
One last push, one last long day on the road. Ahead of me, the once again vast and mostly empty landscapes of Nevada. I really want to spend some proper time in this state, take the back roads, see what I can find, even if it's just emptiness. Maybe later on this road trip in a couple months when the weather is cooler, because today was hot, very hot, around 90 degrees, which makes living in a car pretty rough.
I was pretty hungry.
Finally, I made it to California. I went to the gym to exercise a little after so many hours in the car, and most importantly, to take a shower. Then I drove to the spot where I was going to spend the night. I had missed this sound. There is nothing like falling asleep by the ocean to the rhythm of the crashing waves.
What a change of scenery. Yesterday I woke up at the Salt Flats in Utah, and this morning I'm at the California coast. This is what I love the most about car life for photography, is that I can move and I can go wherever I want depending on the conditions. We have a beautiful foggy day here, whereas it's gonna be really hot, 85, 90 degrees inland. So that's why I decided to just push it all the way here. I have a couple days before I have to be in the city, so I think I'm gonna spend them here along the coast, driving through these beautiful landscapes and hopefully enjoying the weather and the photography. I think I told you about or showed you everything I do to make life in the car possible and to make it so it supports my photography. Again, the whole purpose behind this is to take photos of places. This is not a vacation for me. If it was, I would do it in a very different way. And I know that life in the car is not for everyone. I'm not saying that you should do this, but if your budget is a little bit limited and you want to maximize the time that you spend outside, or if you want to stay in the same location for longer, maybe car life is for you, if only a few weeks a year like I do. If you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one from the California coast.